We feel like if he was in the draft this year, Terry Rozier would have been a lottery pick.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Another July podcast ready for you today. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Coming to you live from New York City in our hotel, which a listener of the show, Gene, has organised for us. So fantastic for Gene to do that. So shout out to you, Gene, as we are now looking at what has happened over the last, I think, week since we recorded the show. As I said, podcasts are going to be sporadic during my time here in the States as I'm trying to enjoy some time off and absorb all that's happened across the NBA. But of course, yesterday I went to a Broadway show, and as I came out, my phone had blown up as Russell Westbrook was traded to the Houston Rockets for Chris Paul from the Oklahoma City Thunder, which included 2 first-round picks and 2 first-round pick swaps. The Oklahoma City have now acquired 8 first-round picks in this free agency draft period, trade period, whatever you want to call it, in the NBA. They also, in the last week, traded away Jeremy Grant to the Denver Nuggets for another one of those first-round picks. So let's start with the Thunder, what this team's going to look like. There's lots of talk, will Chris Paul get bought out, then go to the Lakers on a minimum? That is an absolute shit ton of money for the Thunder to pay out. Chris Paul has 2 more years left on his deal, and it is a lot of money. I don't see them paying that full amount out. I don't see Chris Paul sacrificing $50+ million to go play with the Lakers. There is also talk of Paul being routed to another team, whether that's the Miami Heat or not. That remains to be seen. But as things stand with Chris Paul, he is in Oklahoma City. I don't think we're going to be anywhere near considering Chris Paul as a first-round guy. The injuries at his advanced age and continual hamstring problems are going to be an issue. But I think whatever team he is on, you will see some of those assist numbers rise back up. The last 2 years with Harden, his assist numbers have dropped down. His efficiency really did fall off last year. He battled elbow problems. So how much of the efficiency dropping off was the elbow issue, or was it the fact that he's 34 years of age? That remains to be seen. He's going to be a player that falls pretty significantly in drafts just because of his history, because of his age. And if you end up getting him in a mid-round, a 4th or 5th round, I could actually see that happening in many cases, Chris Paul falling, because I wouldn't want to take him in the 1st. I wouldn't want to take him in the 2nd either. I probably wouldn't want to take him in the 3rd, just with so much uncertainty regarding his health. And you know my status on injuries, of guys not being injury prone and taking that risk on players. But when a bloke hits 30 plus and 34 and has multiple soft tissue injuries to the same area of his body like Chris Paul, that to me is the red flag type of a scenario. Old blokes don't just get miraculously healing hamstrings, and Chris Paul is definitely in that boat, and he's probably someone that I would end up not drafting unless he fell to round 6 or round 7. The rest of that team, we had high hopes for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, assuming there was going to be a Russell Westbrook trade. Well, there was, but unfortunately Chris Paul comes in. Gilgeous-Alexander still has Dennis Schroeder there, so one of those two is just not going to play really at all. Yes, they can play at the 2, but there's also MC Hamidou Diallo, there's Terrence Ferguson, and there's the guy that we just didn't see at all last year, Andre Robertson. There is, of course, an opening at the 3 and at the 4. Both Paul George and Jeremy Grant have gone. The Italian cock, Danilo Gallinari, he comes across. I imagine he starts at the 4 now, and then at the 3 you could have Robertson, and that does open up that 2, whether that's for Ferguson, whether that's for Diallo, whether that's for Schroeder, whether that's for Gilgeous-Alexander playing alongside Paul. All that remains to be seen. But with Chris Paul currently in Oklahoma City, and he could get moved, it is hard to put much trust in Schroeder or Shai without knowing that. Now, the guy that I'd be most interested in is Gilgeous-Alexander, and I'd be happy taking a later pick on him with the hopes that Paul gets traded, with the hopes that he plays 30 plus minutes. next to Chris, but it's not a great. It's not great at this moment for Gilgeous-Alexander's potential breakout ability. I think Gallinari is going to have a huge season with Jeremy Grant gone there as well. No one else really stepping up. A guy that did impress for the Thunder in Summer League was Kevin Hervey, a guy they drafted a couple of seasons ago, played in their Summer League team. So that's a really deep league sort of a situation. Darius Bazley's not going to be able to contribute this season, their first round draft choice from this year. But really, the big news there, of course, is Russell Westbrook gone, and that's so much uncertainty in that backcourt in Oklahoma City with how all these pieces are going to fit, and there's still probably more dominoes to drop. As for Jeremy Grant going to Denver, I think this has to hurt his value. He played a lot of minutes last year, career highs, and now he goes to a team whose front court is inhabited by Nikola Jokic and Paul Millsap. Now, me talking to Denver people during Vegas Summer League, the idea is that we'll see Millsap really kept fresh, that he'll probably still start games, but it wouldn't be... I threw out a number, I go, well, Millsap played 28 minutes, and they said, I could see him playing fewer. I could see him actually going down to 24 or 25 minutes, and I thought that felt really aggressive. So that's something to watch for. That's an idea, that's a thought coming from Denver people, that they really will reduce Millsap's minutes, enabling Grant to stay at that 28 to 30 minute range. So he is going to be a risky pick, Grant, but in those later rounds, 11, 12, 13, you can take that fly. But it does feel like he almost has to be in a worse situation. He won't be the starter, and he has a player. Not like Patrick Patterson coming for his minutes. It's Paul Millsap, the other guy there. There's also Juancho, of course. They played some Mason Plumlee, Nikola Jokic lineups last season, and that's all going to have an impact on Jeremy Grant with this trade that went down, which sent him to the Denver Nuggets from the Oklahoma City Thunder. Of course, the Nuggets also have Jared Vanderbilt, Summer League's leading rebounder. I also said last time that I probably wouldn't do a podcast until DeMarcus Cousins signed, and then about 20 minutes after I posted the show, DeMarcus Cousins signed with the Lakers. So their whole team is really interesting. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Rajon Rondo, of course, is back. DeMarcus Cousins and JaVale McGee there, along with Danny Green. The reporting came out a few days later that they're going to play LeBron at point guard. That's great. He's been a point guard his entire career. What it is more interesting in, does this mean that they are going to reduce Rajon Rondo's minutes? We can only hope, we can only pray. That's all we can do in this situation, that is actually going to be the case. I won't want anything to do with Rondo on draft night. Alex Caruso is this team's best actual small point guard, not LeBron James. He was brought back as well. But with the way they're going to stagger things, LeBron, and then you got KCP, they brought in Avery Bradley. There's Danny Green there on the wings. There's the future MVP, Kyle Kuzma, Anthony Davis, who apparently they just refused to play at center, signing both JaVale and DeMarcus Cousins, which is going to make it hard for them to throw out these really lineups to give enough minutes to some of these players. I've talked about this before, and people say, oh no, Kuzma's still going to get his 32 minutes. I'm not sure I see how, because you've got McGee and Cousins at center. Like, ostensibly, you could say there's 48 minutes there. 24, if someone said JaVale gets 24 minutes and Boogie gets 24 minutes, or 28 and 20, however you want to split it, I don't think a reasonable person could argue with that. If I was to say to you that both of those guys are going to play 16 minutes so that Anthony Davis can play 16 minutes at center, that feels more stupid. It feels more unlikely, and maybe it happens, but I don't think DeMarcus Cousins is coming in and playing 16 minutes a night, nor JaVale McGee, who was massive for this Lakers team down the stretch last year, really putting up some big numbers. So that means that Anthony Davis, nearly all his minutes, in my estimation, come at power forward. 34 minutes a night, maybe? And that gives you 14 extra minutes. That's Kyle Kuzma's minutes at power forward. Kuzma also backs up LeBron James, who plays 34 minutes a night at small forward. And that gives Kuzma, say, 28 minutes. And that's assuming that KCP and Danny Green and Avery Bradley don't play any minutes at that small forward position. This, of course, meaning, or takes on a different idea if LeBron does play that point guard and they don't have Rondo and they don't have Caruso out there, they don't have Quinn Cook out there at all, opening up minutes for Kuzma at the 3. Now, Kyle Kuzma, for all the hype and all the Dutch rudders and Turkish grips and Danish backhanders and rusty trombones that everyone's wanting to give him, he has never been a top 100 fantasy player. And I think the addition of Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins is going to make it even harder for him to get there. So to me, Kuzma's not really a standard league target player. He is a points type streamer guy off a bench that you can add off a waiver wire. Maybe he definitely won't be someone I'm targeting anywhere near that top 100 zone, just with the addition of both Davis and Cousins onto that Lakers team. Some other moves. There's still more stuff in free agency that could go down. We don't know what those things are at this point, but there's been some confusing options at times, or confusing decisions at times. Marcus Morris backing out of his Spurs contract to go to the Knicks. Year $15 million contract, as the Knicks had to restructure Reggie Bullock's deal. I have no idea what the Knicks are going to be doing with that power forward position. Julius Randle, Taj Gibson, Punch Bob Shiplock, Bobby Portis, Marcus Morris, all of these guys we're gonna have the opportunity to play power forward. Now, Bobby Portis and Julius Randle, both, and Taj Gibson, to be honest, all of their best positions is centre. The problem is their centre of the future is Mitchell Robinson. So there's massive scope, massive opportunity for the Professor, Professor Data, David Fisdale, to go ahead and screw this up for everybody. And I don't just mean fantasy managers, I mean Nick's development, I mean his own team, and I mean probably his coaching future, because he is not a good coach, and there are huge ramifications here of decisions that can be made. Now, I don't understand why the Knicks made all these decisions, but Randall, Gibson, Portis, Morris, these guys aren't going to be able to play every single night. And you've got to factor in, of course, that Kevin Knox, his best position, the fort, is at the 4. So you're going to be playing him exclusively at the 3. Oh, by the way, the guy you drafted at number 3, RJ Barrett, is also best position at the 3. You're going to play him at the 2. Oh, well, Alonzo Trier, who apparently is the next best thing since sliced bread. How about Damo Dotson, who played well last year? These aren't high priority guys, but if you're developing a young team, then these are guys you need to be giving minutes to. And then Alfred Payton comes in. So there's lots of interesting stuff there. Marcus Morris, not a guy that you'll be looking at in standard league. And I think his value is going to be really, really squished. Now, him decommitting from San Antonio, I think it helps out those guys in the backcourt a little bit more, as weird as that sounds for a power forward. But what it means to me is that Rudy Gay and Damari Carroll, guys that if Marcus Morris was around, we're going to be having to play a lot more minutes at the 3. They can play a lot more of those minutes at the 4 now. Prior, it was going to be Morris and Aldridge at the 4, with LaMarcus sometimes moving up to the 5 when Jakob Poeltl sits. But now with Morris gone, you can play that small lineup with Gay and Carroll pushing up, moving DeMar DeRozan up to the 3, opening up those minutes in the backcourt for a returning DeJounte Murray, for Derek White, for Lonnie Walker, for Bryn Forbes, for Pat Mills. There's still a massive crowd there. Some people are asking me, oh, Lonnie Walker breakout year? Yeah, maybe, but there's just so many bodies there. We know how good Derek White was last year. We know how good DeJounte Murray was at the end of last season. These guys are going to be absorbing a lot of minutes. Bryn Forbes, one of the only blokes on this team that knows how to shoot, shot almost 40% from 3, does absolutely nothing else, as we know, but having him there as a spacer can be important. And Patty Mills, like a lifeline part of this Spurs team. There's a lot of confusion in that backcourt, and it could lead to guys like Murray and White getting overdrafted in a lot of situations. Love both of their top 50 potentials in a 32-minute-a-night role each. I just don't think that's going to happen with both of those guys. Maybe one gets it, but again, you're finding the minutes for those other players can be a little bit difficult. So there is quite a little bit to be concerned about, I guess, from the San Antonio Spurs. One other thing I do want to mention before we talk some Summer League, there was some talk about Jim Boylan announcing Chris Dunn as his starting point guard. I'm not as sure that that's as clear-cut as what's maybe being reported in some places. My read on it from Boylan is that at this point, that's their starting 5, because that's the starting 5 that they ran with at the end of last season, and then they've got to have training camp for competition. I would be pretty floored if Chris Dunn is the starting point guard on this team. He's probably the 4th best point guard on this squad with Tomas Satoransky. That's not true, because Kobe White had massive struggles in Summer League. Thomas Satoransky, Ryan Archer-Giacono, 2 guys who outplayed Dunn significantly last season. I wouldn't want anything to do with Dunn in a standard league. The additions that the Bulls made can make Satoransky a risky guy, but he does have that top 70 type potential if he's in a starting role in Chicago. But that was a lot of people running with that. Boylan, Chris Dunn's his opening night point guard. He didn't specifically say that. There's some inference taken to get to that level. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with putting Dunn in that position, but I also don't agree that that's what he said at this point in the off-season, that he didn't just announce, this is my opening night starting 5. You have to take a few twists and turns to actually get to that level. The Dwight Howard trade opens up a lot of minutes. I'm sorry, I'm just jumping around with all things that have hit there. The Dwight Howard trade opens up a lot of minutes in Washington for Thomas Bryant. He's going to be a huge pick. Him and Bam Adebayo, and Mitchell Robinson, 2 of the big undrafted sleepers, or 3 of the big undrafted sleepers from last season, who are going to jump up. I think a lot of people, again, I've got so many thoughts in my head. A lot of people are going to overdraft Pascal Siakam this season. I've heard talk of people thinking he's like a top 20 player because Kawhi's not there. maybe there's a fair amount of risk involved in that, I think. There's going to be a big opportunity for the Jedi. Hello there. OG Anunoby now, Norm Powell also with Dan Green gone, and Kawhi Leonard, of course, gone. The 2 and the 3 are open. Now, Fred VanVleet is going to be a standard league guy. There's no doubt about that. But Norman Powell is going to have to step up. The Jedi is going to have to step up as well. They become interesting later round type flyer players in that situation when you're looking at some higher upside guys at the end of a fantasy draft. A lot of people talking about Willie Cauley-Stein as well. I could not like him less as a fantasy option as a player for this coming season. So that's my take on Willie Cauley-Stein signing with the Golden State Warriors. Just having a look to see any other signings. Stanley Johnson and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson both signing in Toronto. Now these are guys who have never, especially Stanley, never been great fantasy options. Rondae has had his moments in Brooklyn, and there is that opening there at small forward. Now let's spell this myth completely. Hollis Jefferson is not a small forward. He might be listed as a small forward on your fantasy team. That might be his eligibility. He is not a small forward. Stanley Johnson's got an opportunity to take some of those minutes that Kawhi Leonard left around. Rondae comes in as ostensibly a backup to Pascal Siakam, so I don't think he's going to be a standard league type guy. And if they play him at the 3, I think that's a real disaster type of situation for him to be playing at the small forward position. So I don't really see that as being an issue for him and Stanley Johnson, just a deeper league sort of a player. A couple of interesting point guard maneuvers. Delon Wright goes from Memphis to Dallas. Love Delon. He's going to start there, in my opinion, over Jalen the Burner Brunson next to Luka Doncic. This pushes Wright absolutely into the mid-rounds. We know he can block shots, he can get assists, he can rebound, he can get steals. The shooting is a concern, but he can score a little bit. I think he's got that top 60 type of upside. I love that. Tyus Jones going to Memphis. Now, Minnesota, dumb. They should have matched it. The Jeff Teague has got one more year.
My name is Jeff.
And Tyus would have been perfect to come in as a point guard next season. The Wolves are clearing their cap space for 2020 when there are no max cap space players outside of Draymond Green available. So I don't know what they're actually doing in that area. But what this means now is it sours me on Ja Morant. I saw a mock draft on Roto World where somebody in that draft took Ja in the 3rd round, and that is absolute insanity to me. You know what? In April, maybe he's a 3rd round player. Maybe. In March, maybe. But wasting a 3rd round pick on an unproven rookie who we haven't even seen play in Summer League, coming off a knee injury, not that that's going to be a problem, but rookie point guards, they suck, and Ja Morant's a rookie point guard. So that is way too high for Morant, and now Tyus Jones comes in, who is better than Ja Morant at this point. He doesn't have higher potential than Ja, but at this point in their careers, he's better. Morant hasn't played. We can say that Morant's going to be great, he's this awesome prospect, and Morant wasn't good as a freshman. We have to remember that. He played against a lower level of competition in college as well. So there are definitely concerns there. Now, I don't know what Taylor Jenkins is going to do in terms of minutes for Morant, but I can see this being a real issue. Ja and Tyus playing together doesn't sound awesome to me. It is a possibility. There is an opening for minutes, though, at the 2 in Memphis. Dylan Brooks, maybe he returns from his injury to take that job. So there could be an opportunity there. But I think this really does put the clamps on Ja, who I would have been looking at as a top 70-ish type of draft pick. That's probably the range. This takes a little bit of that away from me. Tyus Jones, I'd love him if he was anointed a starter and playing 32 minutes a night. I don't think that's going to happen in Memphis. So there is absolutely some confusion there. A couple of other signings. Avery Bradley to the Lakers, not a standard league guy. Jabari Parker to the Hawks. He's going to be backing up John Collins and barely playing. JaMychal Green is a backup in Los Angeles for the Clippers. Alec Burks to the Warriors, who might get 15 minutes a night and not really do anything to touch fantasy basketball relevancy. Trey Lyles going to the Spurs, so I guess he moves into that Marcus Morris role, but Lyles is a guy that needs 30 plus and he's not going to get it, while Kelly Oubre goes back to the Suns. Now, Oubre had a really strong season once he headed across to Phoenix. Phoenix have rid themselves of Josh Jackson, so that does open up some minutes. There is Dario Saric there now at power forward when they could have been playing Oubre Bridges as the 3-4. So now we've got McCall Bridges and Kelly Oubre trying to take those minutes at the 3 with some of those guys backing up Devin Booker at the 2, but we also have to remember that ravishing Rick Rubio, the ravishing one, he's at point guard now, so Tyler Johnson's going to be playing some backup too. So I think it does hurt Bridges and Oubre a little bit. Oubre put up some massive numbers at the end of last season, did it on career high type of shooting numbers, shooting 48% from the field over his final 13 games, averaging 21 points. He also averaged 2 steals, something he'd really struggled at in his career, and his block rate doubled too. So there were some big steps forward for Oubre. He is going to be a standard league draftable guy, and Bridges probably as well, but they're going to be having issues with each other in terms of how everyone's fitting, unless they just decide to excise Tyler Johnson from the rotation entirely, which I would be 100% in favour of. I don't think Oubre will start. I think Bridges will start, and Oubre comes off the bench and plays his 30 minutes behind Šarić, behind Booker, behind Bridges. But that end of season form from Oubre when he was putting up huge numbers, I'm not sure that it's going to be able to stick at that top 50-ish type of level where he was at when the season wound down last season. Ken Birch also back to the Orlando Magic. Now, in the final few minutes of this show, I'm just going to look at some numbers across Summer League. Just talk about some players who stood out to me that are worth mentioning. Nickeil Alexander-Walker from the Pelicans, as well as Jackson Hayes. They looked really good in Summer League. Alexander Walker was a guy that I was pretty interested in the draft. I thought he had some good dynasty value. This year it's going to be tough for him to have an impact with Drew Holiday and Lonzo Ball seemingly entrenched as the 1 and the 2. But for future times, Alexander Walker's a guy. He's diming guys up. He's scoring. He's doing it efficiently. He's blocking shots. He's getting steals. He looks way too good for Summer League, and that's massive for a guy that's played like 2 games. I think the Pelicans absolutely killed the draft, and Alexander Walker is one of those reasons. The other guy they drafted in the second round, Dede, he also looks really good. I talked about him in the Dynasty rookie rankings. I think he's going to have a future in this league. Going to be playing down in Australia for this first season, but a guy to watch moving forward. And Jackson Hayes really looks great. Hayes is not going to have this sort of opportunity. To me, he is not a standard league guy for this year with Derek Favors there as the starting center. His lack of rebounding, his lack of strength, and his athleticism advantage isn't going to be as apparent in the NBA. So I think drafting Jackson Hayes this season is going to be a bit tough. I put out a tweet, that's the right word. Who would you draft at number 3 in Dynasty, behind Zion, behind Ja? And a lot of people threw out Jackson Hayes' name off the back of that first Magic Summer League performance. And to me, that's just getting a little bit too far ahead of yourself. I don't see that for Hayes. He's still got a lot of issues. But as I talked about in the draft prep, in the Dynasty stuff, a big man who can block shots, who can score, who can be efficient from the field, but also shoot a good free throw percentage, which is exactly what Hayes can do, is really valuable. So there is some, probably top 50 upside coming for Hayes, and I'm going to redo the Dynasty rookie ranks when I get home from this trip. A couple of other guys that are worth mentioning, the Shark, Bruce Brown. Baby Shark, point guard at Summer League, had a triple-double, averaging a ton of assists, actually leads Summer League in assists. He looks excellent there. With Derrick Rose and Reggie Jackson as the point guards in Detroit, maybe they play Rose exclusively as a shooting guard that can't shoot. Great decision making. Brown has real value. I like him a lot long term. He didn't have to do really that much last season, but he can generate steals, he can block some shots, and if he's going to develop into a point guard, there's quite a bit to like there about Brown. Another point guard who's going to be a rotation player this year from Summer League, Anthony Simons, has been putting up some really good numbers. We know how. Just go look at his box score from last season to see what he did in the final game of the season. It was unbelievable. Seth Curry is gone. Evan Turner is gone. They did bring in Kent Bazemore, but there's an opportunity, and I think Simon steps into it. So he's a guy to watch for deeper leagues. Mitchie Robinson looked good. Lonnie Walker looked really good in Summer League as well. And a guy that, I talk about this all the time, give the benefit of the doubt to Kentucky guys. Now, maybe I didn't give enough of a benefit of the doubt to Tyler Hero, but he's looked pretty good in Summer League. The passing is what I've been really impressed with, averaging almost 4 assists per game, almost 20 points. Now, he's doing it on some really poor shooting, under 40% from the field and 33% from 3. But as he did in college, he's missed like 1 free throw over about 17 or 20 attempts or something along those lines. His free throw shooting has been immaculate. Now, he's been pressing a bit on offense. I worry still about his ability to create separation against NBA level athletes. And with this Heat team still in flux, maybe Chris Paul arrives. They've got Goran Dragic, Justice Winslow, point guards there. There's Dion Waiters in that backcourt. Jimmy Butler's there as well. Derek Jones Jr., who they really like. Hero, to me, is not going to be a standard league guy yet. But I do think that I'm going to be playing that soundbite a little bit during this season. Hero has shown that he's one of those guys that has more ability than what the Kentucky system allowed him to show. I think he'll be well ahead of Dion Waiters very early on into the season, but that doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be a standard league guy. But really big steps forward for Hero. I've been disappointed by RJ Barrett in Summer League. I don't think anyone could disagree with that. He's had at least one good game. But outside of that, really struggled. And it's Josh, it's Summer League. He's only played 2 games. It's Summer League. I know that. But when we look at Summer League and when we talk about it, if a guy's flaws or the concerns you had from him coming out of college appear again and appear markedly, that's where the problem is. The poor shooting, the poor decision making, the tunnel vision. That's all an issue. We knew that he could rebound. I talked about, is he Wiggins with better rebounding and assist numbers? Maybe. But the shooting is off, the vision is off, the decision-making is poor. It's a real concern. Now, there's no worries taking him in a 12th or 13th round, and he could very well develop. I'm not confident that that's going to be the case for Barrett. Iggy Brisdakis has looked pretty strong. Him getting minutes on this team might be a little bit tough with Barrett, with Knox, and Knox has just looked the same. He's not good. A couple other names I want to bring up. Fiondu Kabengele for the Clippers looks really, really solid. That's a one down the future there with Zubats and Harrell ahead of him. The minutes won't be there. Matisse Thybulle, the steals are still coming, averaging 2 steals and 1.3 blocks in Summer League. He has a real shot at a rotation role, as does DRC Zaire Smith. Both of those guys are going to have to step up in Philadelphia. I think Smith is going to get first crack at it, but as I've said with Thybulle all along, he could be that Tony Allen, Corey Brewer type where you stream him in to get steals because he's obviously being able to do that. Devontae Graham, how much of a chance is there that Devontae Graham by the end of the season is a better point guard than Terry Rozier? Shit. How much of a chance is there that he's better already? He's not going to get that opportunity, but he's obviously just a name to watch. He's looked pretty good here in Summer League. Chris Boucher, G League MVP for the Raptors. With Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, Pascal Siakam still around, the minutes won't be there for him. But if Gasol and Ibaka are gone after this season, Boucher is 100% a name to remember. Carson Edwards for Boston looks excellent. He's been scoring really well. The assist numbers for him are a concern. He's been efficient. To me, he looks like he's going to be better than Romeo Langford, who was their first-round pick. They also picked Grant Williams, who's looked pretty good. The minutes just probably won't be there for Williams this season. Jared Vanderbilt, again, the minutes won't be there, but he's looked pretty good. So has Isaiah Hartenstein, who probably is the backup center in Houston now behind Clint Capella. Duncan Robinson, I also think he's looked pretty good. Aaron Holiday in Indiana coming off the bench now behind Malcolm Brogdon as a deeper league option. There is some value there with him. And Robbie Williams, 10 and 5 with 2 blocks a game and 2 steals for the old Rock DJ in Boston as a center there. They do have Enes Kanter, but I can see, and Daniel Tice, I can see Williams maybe playing himself into a 17-minute-a-night role, becoming that block type of a streamer that we've had success with many players over the times. I'm going to do a full wrap-up of Summer League at some point in the coming weeks once everything is over. But we've seen a few interesting performances from players, obviously big moves across the NBA. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Spotify as well, and on YouTube. Give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe, hit the bell. You know all those great things. I'm going to go out and enjoy New York City today, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Mitch Kupchak.